Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into something that, believe it or not, shapes just about everything around you, every single day. But it's something most of us never even think about. We're talking about land administration. It's kind of like the hidden rulebook, the invisible architecture that governs our planet's most essential and probably most fought over resource. I mean, really think about that for a second. Who gets to draw that line in the sand? Who says, okay, this piece of land is for a house, that one's for a factory, and this big patch over here has to stay a forest? It's not magic, right? And it definitely doesn't happen by accident. It's all the result of a very deliberate and pretty complex system.
And this gets to the absolute core of the issue. We've only got so much land on this planet. It's finite. But our needs for it, for homes, for food, for businesses, for parks, those needs are always growing. That's a recipe for some serious competition and, yeah, a lot of conflict.
So how do we manage all this? Well, societies came up with what's called a land administration system. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like an operating system. Like the software that runs your phone or computer, but for land. It's that underlying framework that lets everything else run smoothly and in an orderly way. So what does this operating system actually do? Well, its main job is to answer three huge questions, and then make those answers public. First, it determines the facts. Who owns what? What's it worth? And how can it be used? Then it records all that info in a way that everyone can trust, which creates certainty. And finally, it shares that information so we're all playing by the same rules. We can actually break this down even further into four main jobs, or functions. Just think of it like this. Land tenure asks, who has the rights to this land? Land value asks, what's it worth? Which is super important for things like taxes. Land use asks, what are we actually allowed to do here? And land development handles, okay, how do we build on it and hook up all the infrastructure? Together, these four pillars are what bring order to what could easily be total chaos. Let's zoom in on that first one, land tenure, because it's not as simple as just owning something. You've got open access, like the open ocean, where basically anyone can use it. Then there's communal property, where a specific group, maybe a local tribe or village, shares the rights. Then you have private property, which is what most of us think of, like the deed to your house. And finally, you have state property, like a national park, where the government makes all the rules.
Okay, so if the administration system is the operating system, then what tells it what to do? What are its goals? Well, that's where land policy comes in. A land policy is the big picture strategy. You can think of it as the mission statement that defines what a country wants to achieve. Maybe it's economic growth, maybe it's environmental protection or social justice. The policy is the why that guides the administration's how.
And a really good land policy isn't just about being efficient. It's about values. A strong policy is always going to aim for fairness, making sure everyone has a fair shot at access and secure ownership. It's going to aim for the long term, promoting sustainable use. And it's going to aim for trust by being transparent and democratic. These aren't just buzzwords. They're the ingredients for a system that people actually believe in.
So that's all the theory. But what does this actually look like in the real world? To see these ideas in action, we're going to take a look at Nepal. Back in 2019, they rolled out a massive national land policy to tackle some of their very unique challenges.
And listen, this wasn't just some dusty government report that sat on a shelf. As one top official put it, this was a great achievement and a milestone. Why? Because it was designed from the ground up to fix deep, long-standing problems with fairness and access to land in a country with a really complex history. And here's where you can really see where a land policy gets its teeth. It's not just made up out of thin air. It's tied directly to the country's highest law, its constitution. For instance, Nepal's constitution says, flat out, that spouses must have equal rights to property. That's a huge mandate for gender equality, and the land policy is the tool to make it happen. And it doesn't stop there. The policy also takes on historical injustice. Another article in the Constitution requires the state to provide land to landless Dalits, who are a historically marginalized community. This is a perfect example of a land policy being used as a tool for social reform, using land rights to try and fix the wrongs of the past. The policy also led to some really practical, on-the-ground changes. For years, Nepal had this old system where land was just put into 4 categories based on how good it was for farming. It was totally outdated. The new policy threw that out and brought in a modern system based on land use, with at least 9 different zones, like agricultural, residential, commercial, and so on. This lets them do much, much smarter city and regional planning. So we've seen how this all works on a massive national scale in Nepal. But you might be thinking, okay, cool story, but why does this matter to me? Well, the truth is, these exact same principles are at work right in your own backyard. Remember that land value function we talked about a minute ago? Yep, that's what determines your property taxes. And that land use function? That's your local zoning board deciding whether a high-rise or a new park gets built down the street. This whole invisible system is shaping your community, your wallet, and your quality of life every single day. And when we look to the future, the stakes are just getting higher and higher. Our global population has blown past 8 billion people, and it's still climbing. That's 8 billion of us who need a place to live, food to eat, and resources to thrive, all on the exact same finite amount of land we started with. Which leaves us with a pretty massive question for our time, doesn't it? In a world this crowded and this complex, how do we design these land systems to be fair, transparent, and truly sustainable for every single person on the planet? The answer to that, well, it's going to shape the world for generations to come. Thanks for tuning in.